with Microsoft 365, specifically Microsoft 365 Business Premium. Another focus around this session is that Microsoft 365 is more than just Office. You'd be forgiven for thinking that Microsoft 365, it's Word, it's PowerPoint, it's Excel. Yeah, it is all those things, but it is so much more. And effectively, organizations like yours could look to potentially consolidate a lot of these features that are included in Microsoft 365, where you might be purchasing some of those features from elsewhere. Now, there's nothing wrong with doing that, but Microsoft believes that when it comes to things such as organizational productivity and things such as security, that cost and complexity are two of the biggest enemies when it comes to digitally transforming a business. There are organizations out there that have got a multitude of different solutions from different vendors stacked on top of the other. This can be incredibly expensive just on the fact that a lot of these products you pay for them per user per month, and then also the fact that these products might be potentially difficult to manage. They're all proprietary. They aren't necessarily all compatible or designed to work with one another. So there's going to be a huge amount of focus around consolidation in this as well. So you're going to get absolutely sick of those words. Digital transformation and consolidation, they're going to be repeated a million times. If you do have any questions as we're going through in this session, you can, if you want, feel free to take yourself off mute and jump in with your question. Alternatively, if you don't want to do that, you can type your questions into the chat box. And we'll take those questions as and when they come through. Right, so let's jump into this. So this is the agenda for what we're going to be looking at today. So the current state of business and challenges that organizations like yours are potentially facing. How Microsoft 365 can help, enabling better collaboration in teams, securing remote access and protecting identity with things such as MFA and conditional access, protecting against cyber threats and data loss, securing devices with Endpoint Manager, and Defender for Business. So these are some of the key topics that we will be touching on as we go through. But the first thing is, what does today look like? Now, I really don't need to bang the drums too much on, how much things have changed over the last few years. We've seen how COVID really kind of brought a massive shift, probably the biggest transformation that we've seen in business in living memory. This did bring a lot of benefits to the way that we work. A lot of people say that they've actually enjoyed being hybrid working, getting to work from home, being more flexible in their approach when it comes to business. But on the flip side of the coin, it did bring about some significant challenges when it came to organizations. For example, areas such as productivity, making sure that when everyone is potentially scattered about all over the place, how can we remain productive? How can we make sure that people are collaborating and working effectively together? Also, issues around security. Now, when people worked in the office, people were surrounded by, you almost call it like a bubble of security whilst they were on-prem, as it were. And when people started working from different locations, different devices, different networks, again, this brought about a huge challenge for businesses. How can we enable this secure remote workforce, but at the same time, maintain very high standards of security? Devices were also an issue as well. We saw an explosion and a continued growth of BYOD, more and more people using personal devices for work purposes, be that things such as laptops, tablets, mobile phones. And again, how do we ensure that the data on those devices, when people are working remotely, how do we make sure the data on people's personal devices remains safe and secure? So these are some of the major challenges that came up. You might have some challenges as well, which you as an organization faced during this period or are still continuing to face today. But to highlight on some of those areas, employees working from multiple locations, a multitude of personal and mobile devices, and of course, that increasing risk, ever increasing risk of things such as viruses, malware, ransomware, those sorts of things. Those types of attacks have been continuing to rise, and more of those types of attack are targeting small businesses. Now, again, as an organization, a lot of the times the knee-jerk reaction to these challenges is to just go out and buy more solutions, buy more software, buy more stuff to solve the problem. But as I mentioned at the beginning, just throwing money at a solution isn't necessarily the most effective thing to do because, again, like I mentioned, cost and complexity, these are two things that we want to try and avoid. Now, a little while ago, Satya Nadella, who is Microsoft's CEO, gave a speech where he was talking about doing more with less, looking inward to the solutions that you might already have, or solutions like Microsoft 365, and the fact that a lot of software and tools exist within these product stacks that are designed to help you as customers meet a lot of these major challenges that organizations face today. Now, there's more than one flavor of Microsoft 365. In fact, this is just an overview of everything that we sell from an SMB perspective. So we've got things such as Business Basic at the top of the list. Now, Business Basic, just as a quick recap on your Microsoft SKUs, just in case you're not so familiar, Microsoft 365 Business Basic is cloud services only. So you can see that M365 Business Basic includes things such as Exchange, Teams, SharePoint, OneDrive, all that good stuff, but it doesn't include things such as the desktop applications, things like Word, PowerPoint, and Excel, which you can download and install onto a device. It doesn't include that. It does include the web versions of Word and PowerPoint and Excel and all those apps. So you can use them, but you need to be online. You need to use that via your web browser. Now, for some companies which are, very digital forward and switched on, that might not be too much of a problem. But I would say a majority of organizations do need the ability to work on applications, important applications, when they aren't necessarily connected to the internet, which is why products like M365 Business Standard has been incredibly popular because it includes all the same stuff that we saw earlier with Business Basic, but then also includes all of the desktop applications, which can be downloaded and installed onto multiple devices per user. Now, the question, how many devices per user? Some people might say 5 devices. You can install these applications onto 5 devices per user. Well, actually, 5 isn't right. It's actually 15. Yeah, that's right. 15 devices. And effectively, it breaks down like this. You can install these applications onto, in fact, let me do that again and actually get all of them. You can install these applications per user on up to 5 PCs or Macs, 5 tablets, and 5 phones per user. So that's 5 of each device type, so 15 in total. This offers you that flexibility to be able to leave the house in the morning with whatever device you've got on you, whether it's your laptop, your phone, your tablet, it doesn't matter. Whatever device you choose to walk out the house with that morning, you have got your entire office with you wherever you go, which it offers a huge amount of flexibility for today's modern worker. Now, Business Standard, again, hugely popular product, but the one that we're going to be focusing on for today's session is this one here, which is Business Premium. Now, the reason that Business Premium is one of the fastest growing Microsoft SKUs is not just because it includes everything that Business Standard does, but it also includes all of the advanced security and device management tools. So some really good stuff in there. Things such as Microsoft Intune, Azure Information Protection, Conditional Access, Azure Virtual Desktop, Defender for Business, Defender for Office 365, and Cloud App Security. And if you're not too familiar on those, don't worry, we will talk about those, what they do and how they can benefit you. But one of the other cool things around Microsoft 365 is it also includes a lot of these hidden gems as well. A lot of these products which some of you might be aware of, but for the most part, not many people know about these additional tools that are included for free in Microsoft 365. For example, take this one here. Power Apps. Now, I don't know if anyone on this call is skilled in app design, coding, or anything like that. Well, if you wanted to build and develop your own applications within Microsoft 365 for use on things such as iOS or Android or Windows, You don't have to be skilled or talented in application design or coding. Power Apps is designed to be a low or no code application which allows you to build your own custom apps using something called a WYSIWYG editor. And in case you're wondering what is WYSIWYG, it's an acronym, stands for what you see is what you get. So it's a little bit like building a PowerPoint slide where you can just click and drag things in. It's designed to be simplified, so organizations, even if you don't have a huge amount of technical know-how when it comes to coding, that sort of thing, you can still build powerful and very useful applications to run within your organization. You can also use other tools from the Power Platform, things such as Power Automate, tools that are designed to automate certain repetitive tasks or certain business processes. I'm sure all of you have got something within your business which is a fairly mundane and repetitive task that needs to be done maybe once a week or once a month. Well, you can use things like Power Automate to automate these tasks for you, freeing up time for you to go and do things that are more important to the organization, and leave Power Automate to again take away some of the stress and headaches of some of those, like I said, monotonous tasks. And of course, you've got things such as Planner as well. Now, there's another product out there on the market which is called Asana. Now, some of you might have heard of Asana. It became very popular when lockdown first kicked off. And effectively, Asana was a tool for project management, for being able to remotely manage projects, your teams, their tasks, all kinds of stuff. But a lot of people didn't realize that within Microsoft 365, there was already a tool which basically did all the same things, and it was called Planner. And again, this allows you to build out, again, plans, tasks, projects, whatever it might be, assign them to individual users or groups of people, set lists of things that need to be done, and all kinds of stuff. And again, being able to manage these tasks very easily without, having to micromanage or phone people up or constantly emailing someone to say, hey, where have you got to with that project? Is it done? Have you done this? Because with Planner, you can see the progress that your team is making on their assigned projects. So again, just from a management perspective, things like Planner, absolutely fantastic. Now, we don't have time to run through absolutely all of these, but I would encourage you to speak to your friends over at Blue Origins about some of these great tools and how they can positively impact you and your business. And of course, there's the security side of things. And I am going to come back to this because we are going to talk about some of these elements of security in a little bit more detail as we go through. So Microsoft did a bit of research around what do a lot of customers want when it comes to the procurement of productivity and security and everything else. And what they found was 64% of buyers prefer to purchase software solutions as a package or as a suite of solutions that meets all of their business needs. Now, this is versus going out and buying all of your stuff from different vendors and everything else. So over half of the buying corporate public want packages. Now, again, we'll leave that to you to decide what you would prefer, but the majority says package solutions are better because everything in that package is designed to work with one another. So you don't have to worry about compatibility, making sure this works with that and vice versa. Also, from a cost perspective, having one single monthly cost makes financial forecasting, again, so much simpler. And again, that is the focus of this whole do more with less. The design of this is to save costs, to increase security confidence of our customers, and of course, with all of these tools, improve productivity. And you can see some really interesting stats down at the bottom here. So you can reduce data breach risks by 45% and security management costs by up to 50. Imagine that, saving 50% on your security costs, which could be achieved with Microsoft 365. And utilizing things such as Teams enable 51% more collaboration and reducing travel expenses by 32%. So a lot of significant value that you can find from M365. And considering that all the things that most customers need from their software, things such as single sign-on or conditional access or identity management controls, endpoint detection and response, device management tools. Now, of course, you can go and buy third-party solutions for all of these different products from loads of other companies. But doing the maths, we found that if you were to do that, it could cost upwards of £50 per user per month. Potentially, Microsoft 365 Business Premium can give you all of these things, which again, a lot of customers do require from their software, but for a bargain price of only £16.60 per user per month. So again, this is just going to allow organizations like yours to just get the most out of your technology investments, really maximize that ROI, and again, reduce on that cost and complexity. Okay, we're going to talk about improving productivity with hybrid work. Just before I do, does anyone have any questions? I'm just checking the chat, just make sure there's nothing in there. No questions from anyone? All making sense so far? Marvelous. Okay, well, like I said, don't be shy. If you do have any questions, please let me know. Okay, so continuing on. Improving productivity with hybrid work. Now, we are, of course, talking about Microsoft Teams. Now, I'm not going to teach anyone here how to suck eggs and start explaining what Microsoft Teams is. I'm sure at this point, a lot of you are very well versed in Teams and in terms of many of the capabilities that it has, and really the business impacts of what those capabilities can bring. But I do want to talk about some elements of Teams which are lesser known. For example, did you know, in fact, that you can use Teams as a platform? Now, we all know you can use Teams for things such as meetings and chats and phone calls and everything else, but the amount of people that don't realize they can actually use Teams as a platform. I mean, let's be honest, Teams is one of those applications which is open on your desktop all day, every day anyway. So why not get it doing more than just meetings and chat? Why not transform Teams into a hub of productivity? And you can do this by adding in applications to run directly within Teams. Now, where do these applications come from? Well, Teams has got a store where you can download literally thousands of applications to run directly within your Teams environment. There are plenty out there. But remember earlier when I was talking about things such as Power Apps, for example, you can use things such as Power Apps to build your own custom applications and deploy them directly within Teams. So again, it does give you that flexibility using off-the-shelf stuff or just building your own custom stuff. And as an example of doing it going down the Power Apps route, check this out. This is an example customer. Now, this customer is obviously involved in some kind of flooring or furniture company or something like that. But you can see that utilizing Power Apps, they have built this application, this customer support application, which is in here, which effectively gives the customer support team this app, which can allow them to see product and pricing, customer details, other product information, all sorts of stuff. And again, that's all from directly within Teams. Now imagine the time saved by the customer support team. Oh, hello.
Sorry there, mate. Were you actually showing something there?
Yeah.
I couldn't see it. Did anyone else see it?
No, nothing showed up, no.
Yeah, and I was going to say that, Ed, as much as you're very attractive and you're very good looking, there's nothing visual to see, and I couldn't refer it to anything.
Wait, hold on. So are you telling me this whole time my screen has not been you can't see my screen?
I can see it.
I can see it.
It is visible.
I can see it too.
Visible.
Okay.
Maybe it's just me then. Me and you, Marv.
I can see it.
You can see the screen. Okay. If it goes black at any point, please just let me know immediately. I mean, I've got the little red board around my screen showing that it is being shared, but if anything were to go wrong, please let me know. But just to confirm, you can see my screen.
So those who can't, perhaps it might be worth dropping out and rejoining the meeting. I know that has worked in the past.
Yeah, no worries. It's just because obviously you look like you're presenting and I just couldn't see anything. So I'll log in and jump back in.
Curious.
We'll just give it just a couple of seconds, just let other people join. Oh, Marvin, has the price rise happened?
Yes, 1st of April.
1st of April it goes up. I think the price that you showed on your last slide was 16 pounds something or another. It's actually 19.92, and then as of April it goes up to 21.72, I think it is.
Oh, okay. My apologies. I've pulled together an old slide there. My apologies for that. Okay. Right, so let us continue. Hopefully we won't have any other tech issues. And if anyone else, again, isn't seeing my screen for whatever reason, drop off the call, come back in. Hopefully that should solve the problem. Okay. So again, the whole benefit of being able to use things such as Power Apps to build applications within Teams. Again, think of the time that could be saved with staff not necessarily having to go to multiple applications throughout the day to find the information they need to get their work done. Again, just bringing everything into one place. And again, it's not just custom built or third party applications. It can also be done with first party stuff. For example, things such as Excel or even things such as Power BI, for example. Now, I'm not sure if there's anyone here who utilizes Power BI, but the ability to embed Power BI dashboards directly into Teams channels, again, meaning that people who need to keep their finger on the pulse of any kind of data within their organization, they don't have to go to a separate application and go hunting through to find the dashboard with the relevant information for them. All the information they need would be displayed very clearly within their Teams channel, which, as you know, can be accessed and viewed on any device. So again, I'm thinking anyone here that's a business leader, business owner, wouldn't it be great that you can just see exactly what's going on with your company at any time just by looking at Microsoft Teams? And again, utilizing Teams as a platform is what this will allow you to do. Now, of course, hybrid meetings have become the new normal. We've all become very well averse to using Teams, I'll assume, on for things such as meetings, gatherings, whatever it might be, business meetings with customers, clients, vendors, whoever that might be. But one thing that I do want to address with Teams is Microsoft Teams Rooms. Now, again, a lot of you here might have conference rooms within your offices, and you don't have to answer this question, but for those of you that do, what meeting room solutions have you got in there? Are you using something like Cisco or Poly? There's nothing wrong with either of those, but if I can just explain just some of the experiences that I've had. Now with the work that I do, I travel to a lot of customers. I work on a lot of customer sites. Sometimes I'll be doing sessions or meetings and they'll ask if they can broadcast this meeting using their conferencing system to one of their other offices somewhere else in the country. And I'm like, yeah, no, that's absolutely fine. But the issue comes about when they ask if they can do that, and then I watch maybe about 7 people try to figure out how to get this conferencing unit to work. Okay, and this probably goes on for about 20 odd minutes until the IT guy comes down and shows them how to use this conferencing system. Now, that to me doesn't seem like a good ROI. You're spending potentially thousands of pounds on conferencing systems, and if it's something which is completely proprietary compared to what your staff use at their desk every day, in most cases Microsoft Teams, if you've got Teams at everyone's desks, why would you buy a conferencing system that is completely separate to what people are used to using. And that's been one of the real benefits around Teams Rooms. The fact that it's familiar, the fact that the learning curve is incredibly shallow, the fact that if you're already using Teams within your organization, anyone in your organization can walk into your boardroom, your conference room, and immediately get to grips with this Teams conferencing system, because it works in exactly the same way as the mobile app and the desktop app. So again, it's familiar, and again, it represents a massive ROI. I mean, surely having 99% of your organization able to use the conferencing systems you procure, surely that's going to add a massive return on investment on the purchase of that product. And again, this is some of the key things that Microsoft Teams Rooms has enabled. The fact that it's easy for everyone to use. It's flexible, being able to turn any type of shared space into a collaboration or a meeting room. And of course, it's all backed by the same levels of standards and security that all products within Microsoft have to meet. Now, Teams meeting rooms is only one part of the message. There is also telephony as well. Now, in November 2019, Microsoft launched a product called M365 Business Voice. Business Voice, its name has now changed. It's now called Teams Phone. I'm just mentioning that now because I've got a short video in a moment where they keep calling it Business Voice, but it's now called Teams Phone. If you ever see anything talking about Business Voice, it's the same thing. It's Teams Phone. And the whole idea when Microsoft launched Teams Phone was to reinvent how telephony is managed, how telephony is done by organizations, because again, things such as COVID really shone a light on the inadequacies of a lot of legacy phone systems. And this was again another major challenge for a lot of organizations when things such as COVID struck. Problems because we had people tied to their desk phones, which made it incredibly difficult for them to make and receive their business calls. Now, some VoIP systems have got things such as call forwarding. Sometimes it worked, sometimes it didn't. And on the most part, a lot of people said that their systems were unreliable. We had organizations having to juggle multiple applications, managing an on-prem PBX, so a phone server basically. Obviously that comes with its own costs and headaches. And a lot of people's phone systems were managed by multiple vendors, again, which again adds that cost, adds that complexity, and just makes things difficult. Microsoft wanted to do telephony differently, giving people the ability to call from any device or any location. The endpoint doesn't matter as long as it's a device that can run Microsoft Teams, whether that be a mobile phone, a tablet, a laptop, a desktop, it doesn't matter. That can now be your desk phone. And of course, don't forget, as we mentioned earlier, you can install Teams on up to 15 devices per user. That effectively means that you can have 15 desk phones. So again, whatever device you walk out your house with, you will have your Office main line with you wherever you go. The fact that it all runs through a single application, Microsoft Teams, you can save money because again, you don't have that TCO of on-prem PBX servers or anything such as that. And of course, because it all can go through a single provider, again, it can just make it easy for you to manage. Now, I want to show this case study. And again, like I mentioned with this case study, they were still calling it Business Voice back then. But I want to show it anyway, because again, the messaging really kind of hasn't changed in terms of the business impacts and the benefits that Business Voice can bring. Now, this customer, they're based in the UK. They're a server and storage company called Boston Limited, based out of St Albans. And effectively, this is their story around how Business Voice has transformed how they get their work done. Have a quick look at this.
Boston Limited is a server and storage solutions provider.
We've got about 200 employees currently, and we ship to about 40 countries. We can't do that without speaking to people on the phone.
Communication used to be a challenge. We were using legacy technologies, classic phone system, and then multiple tools to try and stay connected.
Microsoft 365 Business Voice is a small business phone system that operates from the cloud. It allows you to connect from any device, from any location, and has seamless integration with the full Microsoft 365 ecosystem.
It's like having a virtual office. You've got all the tools available to you in a single screen. People feel as if they are working together.
You've got the full support of chats, file sharing, meetings, and phone calls. You can start off a very simple phone call, and with a click of a button, you can enhance that to give you full video, high fidelity sound, screen sharing, and collaboration.
Having everything in one place means we save time. Time is money. If we can access that conversation, that email, that document on our mobile device, we can get that to a customer faster.
With Microsoft Teams and the integration into Outlook, our users can now load up their contact list, click a phone number, and immediately Microsoft Teams is dialing that person.
Microsoft is a brand name that's trusted, so it puts our minds at ease, but also for anyone that works with us as well.
Any admin, even non-technical users in many countries quickly create phone numbers and assign them to their users.
It's more than just a telephone replacement system, it's a full collaboration tool.
Microsoft 365 Business Voice is essential for me running my team. It's saving me time and I have a calmer life now.
Okay, so that is Teams Phone. So just before we move on, I just want to address a quick thing. Sorry, Marvin. The price for Business Premium is £16.60 on an annual commit. It's £19.92 if you do it on a monthly plan.
Monthly subscription, yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So sorry, I just wanted to just address. Sorry.
No, that makes sense. I just thought, obviously, because it put it out there at £16, obviously that's annually, but obviously on a monthly, yes, it's not
on a monthly. Yes, the 20%. Yeah, 20% increase. Yeah,
that's correct. Okay, thank you.
So yeah, so so just so you all know, so Business Premium annual commit £16.60. If you do it on a monthly rolling, there is a 20% premium charge, which brings up to £19.92. But we'll talk about that more as we go on. So we've just had a quick look at that video for talking about all the great things around Teams Phone. Now, a lot of key points were made in that video, but one thing that I do really want to highlight is when the managing director of Boston Limited said that this is more than just a phone replacement system. It's a full collaboration suite. And really, that is the best way to sum up Teams Phone, that it isn't just a phone replacement system. If you compare Teams Phone to some of the other telephony providers, you might see that Teams Phone looks a little bit more expensive. And if you just compare apples to apples, you might say, well, Teams Phone is more expensive than competitors. But when you consider that Teams Phone is built and designed to work alongside all of your other Microsoft 365 tools, be that Teams, your applications, Outlook, your calendar, all of that sort of stuff, it brings it all together. And again, that is where the value lies within Teams Phone, the fact that it is a collaboration suite and not just a phone replacement system. But of course, with Teams Phone, you do have the options to either purchase either desk phones, you can use tablets, laptops, mobile phones, whatever it might be. You have the flexibility and the freedom to choose the endpoint that the calls will be received on. Imagine how much money you could potentially save as an organization if you didn't have to procure desk phones for your staff, if they could use either their personal or their company issued mobile phones as their work landlines. So again, there is potentially a huge amount of savings that can be made just in device procurement alone. Now, some people might argue that Teams Phone, the new kid on the block, how could they possibly compare against a lot of the very well-established telephony providers? Well, let me tell you, Gartner in 2021, we're waiting to get the 2022 figures, but as far as I've been led to believe, not much has changed. But with this Gartner Magic Quadrant around unified communication as a service, you can actually see that Microsoft is actually up there in the leaders category, beating out a lot of very well-known and very well-established third-party telephony providers. So again, Teams Phone, one of the best unified communication as a service solutions that you can currently get today. And one of the things that makes Microsoft's proposition even more diverse is there's a couple of different ways that you can utilize your Teams Phone setup. For example, if you were to start using Teams Phone, you can either use Microsoft Teams calling plans, where the calling plan and everything goes through Microsoft. So Microsoft will be your provider for everything, including your phone billing. Now, some of you might be in commitments or in contracts with your third-party phone providers. Maybe some of you are on like BT or 8x8, for example. Well, that doesn't necessarily have to be a stumbling block. You can actually utilize 8x8 as your phone provider, but then still have all of that routed through Microsoft Teams. So effectively, this can give you the best of both worlds. If the Microsoft calling plans don't quite match what it is your business requires in terms of the type of calls that are being made, maybe you make a lot of international calls and the Microsoft Teams calling plans don't quite measure up for what you need, you can keep your existing telephony provider and effectively have your calls routed through Teams. So again, the best of both worlds, a phone system that gives you that flexibility and freedom to work and use any device from anywhere, but then still sticking with your phone provider who provides you with potentially a great deal. And again, even though that Teams Phone is still relatively new, it's maturing every single day. New features are being launched all the time into Teams Phone. For example, we saw that in 2021 we had the launch of things such as CarPlay support, the ability to make and receive calls through your car's integrated stereo system. So again, a lot of really cool stuff that is coming through. And in terms of just like major cool features, calling and admin, a lot of the key things that a lot of organizations would require their phone system to do. Now, if you notice things on there which aren't there or things that you require that are missing, again, don't forget that Teams has a load of third-party support. So if there are certain elements, one of the key ones which is often mentioned is call recording. So when someone phones through to your business and you've got that, this call is recorded for quality and monitoring purposes. Currently, Teams can't do that natively. So you do have the ability to use third-party applications which can actually provide that support. So again, Teams, it's still growing. Like I said, November 2019 is when Teams Phone first launched. So it is still growing, lots of new features being added. But as it sits at the moment, for most organizations, the services and the features that Teams calling has are more than enough to satisfy a lot of organizations of all sizes around the world. So, just in terms of this Forrester Total Economic Impact Study, we saw that using Teams Phone, saving time, reducing costs, and improving business performance, that there was 1.25 hours per week saved by mobile workers. There was 11.1 million 3-year net savings, 132% return on investment, and the payback period only being 3 months. Now, these are just some snippets of a larger study. There is a link to the study. We will send out a copy of these slides and links for you to check out, but have a look at that Total Economic Impact Study. Some really good stuff around how Teams can really positively impact your business. Okay, before we go on to the next bit, I'll just take a quick pause for breath and an opportunity for any questions.
Nothing here, Ed.
Okay, nothing. Ricky, I see your comment in the chat. Everything all right there? No, we all good? Okay, we will press on. Like I said, any questions at any point, please don't hesitate to shout them out. So the next thing is quite a big area, which is, of course, security. Now, of course, this is always a hot topic of conversation for all organizations of all sizes. Microsoft, believe it or not, Microsoft is actually one of the world's top security companies, according to organizations such as Gartner, Forrester, the IDC, have all rated Microsoft security services as some of the world's best. And that surprises a lot of people that I speak to. Again, a lot of people don't necessarily consider Microsoft to be a security company. Microsoft, they make Word, PowerPoint, and Excel. They're not security. So a lot of people might overlook Microsoft security, favoring, again, a lot of third-party solutions. But again, Microsoft is doing a huge amount around security. Just some examples there, analyzing 43 trillion signals every single day, really trying to get an understanding of what the current threat landscape looks like. And of course, speaking of that threat landscape, we mentioned this earlier, that there was a 300% ransomware increase in the past year, with over 50% of those attacks targeted at small businesses. Now, it used to be the case where attackers would go after, you know, the big fish. They'd be going after the big global conglomerates, the big enterprises. But those days, they're gone. Attackers don't care. They don't discriminate. They will go after literally anyone who they feel they can get something out of. If you've got something that's valuable to you, well, guess what? It's valuable to them as well. And they will use whatever tools they have at their disposal to get information or hold you to ransom and basically separate you from your money. Some interesting stats. 1 in 4 SMBs state that they had a security breach in the last year. That was 1 in 4 that actually admitted it. I suspect that is probably a lot higher in reality. Over 70% of SMBs think that cyber threats are becoming more of a business risk. And again, is that a sentiment that you share? Are you focusing now more on cybersecurity? And of course, M365 Business Premium is a tool which you can use to increase your security, because again, Microsoft approaches security with Microsoft 365 in a layered approach. Security around identity, device security, application, and document security as well. These are some of the 4 key areas. And we're going to talk about some of these features that are included in M365 Business Premium. We're going to break it down into these 3 pillars: enabling secure access and protecting identity, defending against cyber threats and data loss, and easily securing and managing devices. So let's talk about the first one, which is enabling secure access and protecting identity. Now, I'm going to throw out a question for you guys. What do you think is always the weakest link in any organization's security landscape? What do you think is always the weakest link, the first domino to fall? Any thoughts?
Users.
The users, yes, absolutely. It is, yeah, the users, the people, absolutely. And it's normally the users, not all the time, but normally it's the users, because they get to do things like maybe even choose their own passwords, for example. So for a bonus point, does anyone want to take a wild stab at what is still in 2023 the most used password in the world? The answer might depress you. Yeah, well done, Freddie. Password. How bad is that? That in 2023, password or variations on that password 1, password 123 are still the most popular or the most used passwords. And there's little wonder that because of that fact, that 80% of network breaches are due to weak and stolen passwords. So I want to talk around how M365 can help secure things such as identity and access. And the first thing, which is, and all of this stuff which I'm talking about now is included as part of M365 Business Premium. You don't have to pay any extra for it. It is there to be used. And the first one is, of course, MFA, which is multi-factor authentication. Now, I'm sure a lot of you are familiar with MFA, what it is, what it does, what it's for. But in a nutshell, MFA is there to prevent passwords from being the single point of failure. That even if your password were to be stolen without the secondary authentication method, be that something like a mobile phone or an oath token, without that secondary method, the password on its own would be useless. And MFA is one of the simplest, yet one of the most effective things you can set up to protect your organization. Just by using MFA alone, you can prevent up to 99.9% of identity-based attacks just by using this one solution. Now, some of you might already be using Microsoft MFA, and if you are, fantastic. And some of you might be using MFA from other providers. And again, there's nothing wrong with that. MFA, Microsoft isn't the only organization in the world that sells MFA products. But remember what I said at the beginning, that we were looking to cut down on cost and complexity. Some other vendors, one of the popular ones in the UK, Cisco Duo, they do a good job with MFA. A lot of customers use Cisco Duo. Maybe some of you on this call use Cisco Duo. And like I said, nothing wrong with Cisco Duo. It's a fantastic product. It really is. But we need to remember that Cisco Duo, it is proprietary. It needs to be set up, configured, and managed outside of everything else and integrated with everything else in your platform. Also, Cisco Duo has its own per user per month cost attached to it. I think it's around £2.40 per user per month. And again, £2.40 doesn't sound like a lot of money, does it? But, you know, scale that up over the amount of staff that you have. Maybe 20, 50, 100, 200 users. Suddenly, something that costs only £2.40 per user per month is now potentially costing your organization potentially hundreds of pounds a month on a single solution alone. By integrating things such as MFA into something like M365, you've got that single monthly cost. It's all included. And again, it's because it's integrated into M365, it's going to be easier to set up, to configure, to manage, and of course it's going to save you money as well. But one of the awesome things around security within Microsoft is everything is designed to work together. So take, for example, other areas of security, things such as conditional access, for example. Now, if you haven't heard of conditional access, effectively, this is a feature which effectively scrutinizes every single login attempt that you make. So say, for example, I'm working from home and I'm working on my laptop. Without things such as conditional access, I just need my username and password, and I can sign in and access Microsoft 365 or whatever internal applications I want. But you know, one of the big problems at the moment, especially with hybrid working, again, how can we be 100% absolutely sure that the people who are signing in to our internal infrastructure are the people who they claim to be? And again, how can you be sure? When you're not working together in an office and people are signing in remotely, how do we know that they are the actual people? Well, this is what conditional access is there to do. So when I try and sign in this time, I have to meet certain conditions first. One of them could be, for example, my location. Where in the world am I signing in from? Is it a location that's trusted? And all of this goes by my IP address. Is it a location that's known, that's trusted, that's allowed? I can set up rules in my organization that say don't give access to IP addresses that have come from certain locations, you know, just to minimize my risk. And of course, if it is actually me trying to sign in, but I'm actually on a business trip over in sunny Spain at the moment, again, the location is not going to make sense. I don't normally sign in from Spain, so why am I doing it now? Well, what conditional access then does is it then gets MFA to get me to prove that I am who I claim to be. And then that way, once MFA has been satisfied, I can then access my environment. So again, it's just making sure that the right people are getting the right access. And you can rest assured that everyone who is accessing your internal data, infrastructure, documents, whatever it might be, they are the right people. They are your people. But it's not just location. It's also things such as the condition of the device as well. Is this a device that is known? Is it a device that's trusted? And again, this goes by things such as the device's serial number. And of course, we can set conditions that say if your computer isn't updated with the latest version of Windows or the latest version of your antivirus, then access wouldn't be approved. So we can make sure that only trusted devices and devices that have been updated to the latest OS and security settings are the only devices that can be allowed in. I used to work for Microsoft before I came to this company, and I can tell you that within Microsoft, if you don't have your device updated and you try and sign in to use internal resources, it just doesn't let you do it. You can't do it until you've updated your device. Microsoft don't want people to risk people bringing in threats from the outside on outdated devices. So again, is that a risk that you want to take? I'm sure it isn't. So again, things such as conditional access can mitigate that risk. So that's just a couple of examples what can be done with conditional access, and again, some really cool stuff. But also there is the ability to access workloads remotely as well with Microsoft 365, utilizing things such as Azure Virtual Desktop. Now, maybe some of you on this call have already using some kind of virtual desktop infrastructure, whether it's VMware, Cisco, or whoever it might, or Citrix. Sorry, I meant to say Citrix, not Cisco, Citrix. So effectively, Azure Virtual Desktop is Microsoft's offering into that virtual desktop world. And you can argue one of the best or the best virtual desktop experience. And that probably should come as no surprise. Microsoft makes Windows, Microsoft makes Azure. So it stands to reason that their version of Windows in a virtual form would be better than the competitors. And there are a few key areas in which Azure Virtual Desktop does stand apart. It's the only VDI that offers a multi-session tenant. For example, multi-session means that I can have a single virtual machine servicing multiple users. So not everyone has to have a virtual machine allocated to them. That can save significant amounts of money. But why would customers utilize Azure Virtual Desktop? What are the benefits? Well, I heard this story a little while ago, and it was during COVID, it was during the pandemic, but it's still a pretty great story about how Azure Virtual Desktop can enable a workforce. And effectively, there was this hospital in Kent, this NHS hospital, and when COVID all kicked off, they had around 200 admin workers that all had to be sent home. Now, this was a problem because all of these admin workers were using physical desktops, and because those desktops contain things such as patient medical records and information, they weren't allowed to take those desktops home with them. So what were they going to do? Well, the NHS considered buying everyone a laptop. They quickly decided against that because it was going to cost a fortune. They then spoke to Microsoft and decided on Azure Virtual Desktop. Within 24 hours, they were able to spin up virtual desktop environments for all 200 of their admin staff with all of the applications and services that they needed to use. The NHS then told their staff, everyone go home and just grab whatever device you can get your hands on. Personal laptops, desktops, tablets, iPads, whatever. As long as it's got a web browser on it, that will work. And effectively, that's what happened. All of these workers worked from home on their personal laptops and desktops and whatever it was. They could still continue to do their work. All their work was protected in the cloud. It was configured so there was no way that these workers could copy data from the virtual desktop onto their physical desktop. So again, all security and compliance was met. And again, it was incredibly, compared to buying laptops, it was incredibly cost saving as an exercise. Now, why am I telling you about Azure Virtual Desktop when this session is all around M365 and doing more with less? Well, the reason is that with Azure Virtual Desktop, your Azure Virtual Desktop license is included if you have any of the following SKUs. So if you've got M365 Business Premium, Frontline Worker 3, Academic, or E3 or E5. We're focusing on Business Premium. So if you have Business Premium, you have a license to use Azure Virtual Desktop for no additional licensing cost. Okay. You have to pay anything extra on licensing. The only thing you'll have to pay for is for the consumption basis of things such as the virtual desktop and the storage, but you don't have to pay for a license. So if any of you out there are utilizing any kind of virtual desktop infrastructure from Citrix or VMware or anyone else, find out how much you're spending on licenses, because I guarantee that is something which could be saved significantly with Azure Virtual Desktop if you're utilizing Microsoft 365 Business Premium. Maybe some of you out there are using RDS solutions, for example. And again, Azure Virtual Desktop can save you as customers significant amount of money on licensing. If anyone here is utilizing RDS, there are 3 licenses you need to get started with RDS. You need an RDS license with software assurance, you need a server OS license, and a version of Office which is compatible with RDS. That's 3 licenses. Whereas with M365 Business Premium, all of your licensing is included for Windows 365, for Azure Virtual Desktop, sorry. So a lot of significant benefits that can be made if you are considering virtualization. And if you've got Microsoft 365 Business Premium, then Azure Virtual Desktop is already there waiting for you to use it. And again, some of the key areas in which some of you might work, some of the key areas where we've seen virtualization be incredibly popular are around certain areas. So if you work in an industry which is bound by strict regulations and compliances, absolutely, Azure Virtual Desktop can make a significant difference, especially if you have an elastic workforce or if you've got employees that work BYOD, where they bring their own devices. So a lot of key areas where Azure Virtual Desktop can make a significant difference to your business. Okay, going on to the next bit now. Just checking any questions. Are we all happy? Okay, sorry, bear me just 2 seconds. Sorry, I think is my screen still being shared?
Yes, it is. Yeah,
it is. Okay,
yes, it is.
Fantastic. Okay, so this next bit is around defending against cyber threats and data loss. Now, one of the more common attack vectors is, of course, emails and phishing attacks. Some of the world's largest ransomware outbreaks all began with a phishing email, and we're wisening up to it. You know, a lot of us on this call will have those templates when you receive emails reminding us not to open up links or attachments from people that we don't recognize. So, you know, a lot of people, you know, have wisened up to the threat that opening up a link or an attachment from someone you don't recognize can potentially bring to an organization. But phishing attacks have been becoming increasingly more sophisticated. There are a whole host of stories out there of where attackers are utilizing social engineering, going on to things such as LinkedIn, learning more about your company, learning more about your company's top people, the managing director, the finance director, finding out their names, going onto your website to find out what your email format would look like, and using that information to effectively spoof emails. So emails can pose a significant risk. If you were to open up a link or an attachment from an email you don't recognize, you could inadvertently launch an attack on your organization. So what can Microsoft 365 do to protect users against these types of email-borne threats? Well, we've got something included once again in M365 Business Premium called Defender for Office 365. Now, this tool is designed to protect you against links, malicious links or attachments. So say, for example, you receive an email, you open up a link or an attachment that was in that email. You didn't look at where the email or who the email was sent by. You're just on autopilot and you open it up. Like I said, that can cause some significant damage, but lucky for you, you've got Defender for Office 365 already installed in your tenant. When you open up a link or an attachment, it opens it, but it opens it in a detonation chamber. It opens it in a isolated virtual sandbox. So again, it doesn't matter that we've opened it because it's opening in this isolated environment. And at this point, the AI-powered attachment scanning goes to work. It's looking for anything suspicious about that link or an attachment. Is it trying to install something? Is it trying to make a change? Is it trying to run a script or, something that, web links or attachments shouldn't normally do? And if it detects anything that it doesn't like the look of, it's going to flash a warning similar to this up on your screen, telling you that either this website or this attachment has been deemed as malicious. So this is great because of this isolated virtual environment. We've managed to keep the end user safe. They've been notified that whatever it was they were trying to do was malicious, and it has stopped them in their tracks before this can turn into a major issue. But the cool thing about Defender for Office 365 is that the story doesn't end there. If you were to open a link or an attachment and it triggered this response, it will also notify your IT administrators. It will let them know that at 9:30 a.m. you opened this email that triggered this response from Defender for Office 365, and it will give your IT administrators a lot of details around what type of attack this potentially was. It will also give them information whether someone else in the company has also received the same email as you. Chances are it's not just you, there'd be multiple people in the company, and this is going to give IT administrators that visibility that your organization could be under attack right now with a targeted spear phishing campaign against your organization. And this will give IT administrators within your organization not just the knowledge of what is going on right now, the contextual awareness, but also a list of tools that can be used to mitigate this attack, from, again, being able to remove these emails from Exchange and being able to batten down the hatches to make sure that your organization is strengthened, because quite clearly you are in the crosshairs of some attacker. And we've actually seen examples of where this has become incredibly useful. Some of you know AstraZeneca, the vaccine manufacturer. At the end of 2021, end of 2020, they were hit with a targeted spear phishing attack against their organization. Now, according to the media, the attack was perpetrated by attackers hailing from North Korea, presumably with the intentions of stealing or disrupting vaccine research. But effectively, because of Defender for Office 365, the IT administrators at AstraZeneca were able to very quickly identify that this was a large-scale targeted spear phishing attack against their organizations and multiple employees, and effectively give them the recommendations and the tools to effectively counter this attack before it turned into a major situation. And again, Defender for Office 365 can keep your employees safe, and it's going to give your IT administrators much greater scope to be able to protect their own borders. Now, one of the elements around security, which sometimes is overlooked, is document security. Now, let's be honest, what is more valuable to an organization than your IP, your intellectual property? That is what makes your company what it is. And what is it that you do to protect it? And again, I don't want you to answer this question out loud if you don't want to, but I want you to have a think about this. Aside from a stern rollicking, what do you have in place within your businesses to stop people from sending data outside of the organization, confidential data? So aside from a company policy of getting slapped about, what is going to stop an employee from potentially going rogue and sending sensitive corporate information outside of the business? So have a think about that. because you'll be amazed the amount of people that don't necessarily have any physical barriers to stop that from happening. Luckily, M365 Business Premium includes this, which is Azure Information Protection. And effectively, Azure Information Protection allows us to classify and label data based on its sensitivity. So say, for example, we've got when you deploy Azure Information Protection, it works across things such as Outlook, Word, PowerPoint, Excel, even PDFs. So when it's all installed, this is what you get. So whenever you're in Word, PowerPoint, or Excel, you'll get this kind of banner running across the top of the screen with all of these different policies. And you can configure this to be whatever you want. This is just how it looks out of the box. But you can see these different policies. We've got personal, public, general, confidential, highly confidential. And effectively what this means is, depending on the sensitivity of the document we're working on, we can apply a policy to it. So let's say, for example, I want to share this secret document with all of you. Let's just pretend we all work for the same company. I want to share this secret document with all of you, but I don't want this document to be shared or leaked outside of the company. So utilizing Azure Information Protection, once I finish my document, I can apply a confidential policy. Now, the cool thing about this, when I apply the policy, it actually puts the security of the policy, it embeds the security of the policy into the metadata of the document itself. That means that the security travels with the data, and it's not reliant on the people I share the document with also having Microsoft 365 or Azure Information Protection. It doesn't matter where this document goes now. The security is embedded into the document. And this confidential policy could mean that only members of my organization can view, access, or edit this document. If you would then try and share this document with someone outside of our business, when they try and open the document, they would get an error message telling them that they do not have permission to open or view this document. So again, this is going to ensure that my company's most confidential or sensitive information remains in the hands of trusted employees. Now, we can take it a step further as well. So I just explained what a confidential policy could be like. And again, you can configure these policies to pretty much do whatever you want. You can change this around. For example, I could create a policy called highly confidential. And let's say that I want to do the same thing again. I want to share this document, but I don't just not want this document to be shared outside the business. I also want to control what people can and can't do with the document once it's in their possession. So, for example, this highly confidential policy could have been configured to mean that people can look at the document, but they can't save a copy of it. They can't take a screenshot. They can't print the document. They can't copy and paste it to a USB stick. They can't show this document on a Teams call or a Zoom call or a WebEx or whatever. Again, this is just going to really narrow down and control what people can and can't do with data that's in their possession. And if someone was to try anyway, if I was to send this document to one of my employees and they try to print it, but it doesn't work, they get an error message saying that the document's policy does not allow printing, and they try to save it, they try to copy and paste it to a USB stick, they try to screenshot it, they try and all this stuff. What that person doesn't realize is every time they try and do something to the document that doesn't work, I receive a notification telling me what that person just tried to do. So I will have a whole list of things this person was trying to do to the document, which means I'm going to be picking up the phone to that person and say, hey, why are you trying to copy that super secret document to a USB stick? Or why are you trying to take a screenshot of that USB stick? The fact is, I will be aware of what people are trying to do to my documents. And if I don't trust that person anymore, well, I can claw back and revoke their access. So the next time that employee tries to access this secret document, they would get an error message telling them that they no longer have permission to access this document. Azure Information Protection is a brilliant way of you as an organization, as a business leader, making sure that your company's most confidential or sensitive information remains within inside the business, and it can only be accessed by trusted employees. And again, all included as part of M365 Business Premium. Now, quick question for you before we go on to the next piece. Is anyone here familiar with the term shadow IT? Anyone heard that term before? Shadow IT, anyone? Nope.
Can't say I have.
Do you know what? It sounds more sinister than what it is. It sounds like it's going to have something to do with ninjas, but it doesn't. Shadow IT is quite simply when someone within an organization starts using applications or services that are not sanctioned by their organization. Now, some of you might think, well, what's the problem with that? Well, there could be some significant issues with that. Say, for example, you've got an employee within your organization who doesn't like using your OneDrive or your SharePoint, and instead chooses to use Google Drive or Dropbox or something like that. Imagine that person starts saving corporate data into that public cloud, into their personal Google Drive. Well, that's going to be a problem for a couple of reasons. Reason number one, I'm absolutely sure that's gone against your own company policy. And I'm absolutely positive that is well against GDPR, especially if there's customer information on there as well. So shadow IT could be putting your organization at risk of a breach in GDPR if someone is using some kind of personal storage account on their computer and they're saving corporate data into it. But also, shadow IT could be an issue if someone is using their computer to, I don't know, maybe some of these file sharing sites where people download pirated movies or pirated music or stuff like that. And again, I'm not saying any of your employees are doing that, but how would you know if they were? That's the big thing with shadow IT. How do you know? Especially nowadays with flexible hybrid working, how can you be sure what people are doing on their company devices? They could be doing all sorts, and you would be none the wiser until something awful happens. So this is the whole idea with Cloud App Discovery. This is more of an admin tool than something your end users would use themselves. This would effectively give your IT department visibility over what applications and services are being used on company devices. And of course, we can see on this, I know there's a lot going on this slide, but we can see down here, we've got our discovered apps. So everything in green is sanctioned. So everything on that list here that's green, that's absolutely fine. That's stuff that we know and trust. And everything red is unsanctioned. Stuff that people have just downloaded and installed onto their device themselves. Now, of course, we get a whole list of what these applications are. Now, of course, we don't expect anyone to have a completely encyclopedic knowledge of every single application that exists. And luckily, you don't have to. Microsoft have done this for you. So if you notice something on this list that is unfamiliar to you and you go, Mega, what is Mega? Well, you can click on it, and it will tell you exactly what that website is. It will tell you that it's a file sharing website commonly used for piracy and movies and software and other illegal things, and that it has a very low security score due to the fact that a lot of people's devices get infected from visiting that application. So again, it's going to give you context. It's going to give you a good idea of what that is and what kind of risk it would potentially pose. And if I notice something on there which I don't like the look of, well, you can use tools to block access to it. The next time your employee tries to access that application or that website on their company device, they will just get an error message telling them that that website has now been blocked by the administrator. So again, this is putting companies like yours in a lot of control over what applications and services are used. Now, again, lockdown did bring about a lot of kind of ingenuity. People were separated from the tools that they were used to using, and a lot of people found workarounds. just software and applications they found on the internet and have just started using it. Now, again, how many of your employees found workarounds during the pandemic and are still using third-party tools which could be potentially damaging to your organization? Well, Cloud App Discovery is going to help you find that answer and then take the appropriate action based on what you discover. Okay, just check in for any questions. Right. Freddie, absolutely. It was dark and sketchy. Okay. So the next thing is around devices. Now, of course, managing the security of devices is absolutely paramount. I mentioned at the beginning that we've seen a huge rise in BYOD, more and more people using personal or a multitude of different devices now to be able to get their work done. And of course, managing these devices is imperative. We have a tool which is called Endpoint Manager, which is a part of Microsoft Intune. And effectively, Endpoint Manager allows us to manage our devices, whether those devices are laptops or desktops or mobile phones, tablets, whatever it might be. You can manage them with Endpoint Manager. Now, there are two different flavors in which we can manage these devices. The first one is something called MDM, or Mobile Device Management. Now, why would I use MDM over this option, for example? Well, I'll tell you. MDM would typically be used if they are company issued devices. So if these are devices that I've given to my staff, whether that be mobile phones or laptops, whatever it might be, if I own the asset as the company, I'm probably going to manage them with MDM. And that's because that gives me as the organization a lot of control over the device. If the device were lost or stolen, I can erase all the data from the device remotely. I can encrypt all the data. I can lock the device if it were to be misplaced. I can control what applications and services can be installed onto that device. If I don't want my staff downloading Snapchat and Instagram and TikTok onto their company mobile phones, well, I can block that from happening utilizing MDM. So that gives me a lot of control over what I can do with these assets. Now, this is great if it's a corporate asset, but if your staff are bringing their own devices into work, MDM probably isn't going to be the one. Because, I mean, I don't know about you. If I had my own personal mobile phone, which I bought with my own money, I probably wouldn't want my company dictating what applications I can and can't install on my mobile phone. And also, I wouldn't want my company to have the ability to erase all of the data from my personal mobile phone at the drop of a hat. And Microsoft agrees, which is why we have this, which is MAM, which is Mobile Application Management. Now, this would typically be used for more BYOD, bring your own device scenarios, where people are using their own personal devices, again, whether it be laptops, mobile phones, whatever it might be. And effectively, the way that MAM differs from MDM is that MAM doesn't have control over the device. It only has control over the applications that are owned by the company. For example, let me illustrate what I mean. Let's say that this is my mobile phone right here, and I've enrolled it into MAM. Now, when I do that, it creates something called a multi-identity policy. Now, don't worry about that. That's just a very fancy way of saying data separation, separating my corporate managed data and my personal applications. Now, it's worth mentioning at this point that the company would have no visibility over my personal apps. They wouldn't be able to see what applications I've got, what I've got installed. They wouldn't see any of that. The only thing that my company would see is the applications that they own. So the managed company-owned applications. So this kind of means I've got the best of both worlds. If I was to wake up one morning and think, you know what, I don't want to work at this job anymore, I'm going to phone up my boss and quit. Phone him up, yep, I quit, I'm not coming back. My boss sends a message to IT, Ed's quit, erase his phone. And what they do, they can't get rid of my personal apps, but they can get rid of my managed applications. And that's it, that's all they can do. Leaving my personal data completely untouched. So again, really kind of bringing out the best of both worlds. The fact that I can have my own personal phone, I can still continue to do all of my work on it. I can still use all the personal apps that I want. And then should I decide to leave the company, it's just that part of the device that's deleted, not the personal stuff. But what does it mean for data? Let's say, for example, I receive an email and that email contains a Word document. Now, where can I save? If I wanted to save that Word document, where can I save it? Well, I can save into my corporate OneDrive. That's no problem because, as you can see, it's all part of the managed applications. But what if I wanted to save that Word document into my personal Google Drive, for example? Well, unfortunately, that's not going to work because data cannot cross this multi-identity policy border. Any data that has come through a managed application cannot cross over into a personal application. So again, this is just going to ensure that any corporate data, even on a mobile phone, is going to remain in a part of the device that is always controlled and managed by the business. And again, all of this is included in M365 Business Premium. Now, just in case any of you are thinking, screenshot? Could I just take a screenshot of the corporate data and then that way it's a screenshot, it's not actually the document? Well, bear this in mind. Remember we spoke earlier about Azure Information Protection. Again, classified corporate data. If you try and screenshot anything corporate, not only would it not work, again, your device could potentially turn supergrass and let the document owners know what it is you've just tried to do. And then you potentially having to have a very uncomfortable conversation with your boss. Okay. Got a couple more things to cover and then we will be on the home stretch. But before we go on to the next thing, are we just checking for questions? No, we're all good.
No, all good, Ed. Thank you.
Oh, marvelous. Excellent. Okay, so this next one is Defender for Business. Now, I'm not going to go through the entirety of Defender for Business, only because it is a massive product. Please reach out to the great guys over at Digital Origins. They will be able to talk to you more about Defender for Business, but I'm going to give you a flavor of really kind of what it is and what it's for. Now, everything that we've spoken about up until this point when it comes to security has all been stuff that's been designed to keep people out. Okay, so keep people out of our property, as it were. Now, if we were to consider Microsoft 365 as a house, all the security we've discussed so far has been things such as gates and padlocks and doors and that sort of stuff, you know, things designed to keep people out of the building. But what if someone gets into the building? What if someone somehow manages to get past our gates and our padlocks and everything else and they get into our house? How do we detect their presence? Well, that's what Defender for Business is here to do. It's there to protect, detect and respond. Now, we mentioned earlier that there is a huge amount of growth when it comes to cyber threats, but I just really want to highlight the scope of that threat. I mentioned, you know, the whole 300% increase, but the interesting thing with cyber attacks is that it's become an industrialized model. Like cyber crime has become a business model in itself. In fact, I read this study on LinkedIn. Some of you might have seen this. I read this study which said that a lot of organized crime groups are leaving things such as the global drugs trade to go into cybercrime because it's more profitable. Now, this is not career advice for anyone, by the way, but you know, a lot of these big time global crime lords are going to cybercrime because it makes them a lot of money. And the thing is, to launch cyber attacks in days of old, you needed to be talented to a certain extent. You needed to know how to, you know, do a lot of stuff in terms of like coding, creating malware attacks and stuff like that. You don't have to do that anymore. You don't have to do that. Anyone with a chip on their shoulder and a grudge to bear can just go onto the dark web with a credit card and buy any number of cyber attacks that they can have pointed in any direction they want. And the prices, and again, I'm not advocating this, but the prices, they're quite reasonable. You can rent an attacker for around $250. You can buy pre-compromised devices from anywhere between 13 and 89 cents. You can buy stolen passwords for around 97 cents for 1,000 or $150 for 400 million stolen passwords. Absolutely crazy, isn't it? The fact that attacks have become this business model in itself. And because of that, this is why organizations like mine, like yours, like everyone's, needs to be doing more to make sure you're protected against this ever-growing onslaught. And the whole thing with Defender for Business, which once again is included with M365 Business Premium, Defender for Business is effectively just like the enterprise version, Defender for Endpoint, which is available in M365 E5, which is Microsoft's all-singing, all-dancing M365 SKU. But Defender for Business, designed for SMBs, but still to give you enterprise-grade protection. It's designed to be easy to use. You can get up and running with this stuff very quickly, and it's incredibly cost-effective as well. And again, it's cost-effective because it's included as part of M365 Business Premium. And I'd like you to consider the devices that you currently have in your organization, because protecting an endpoint is hard. There is a lot of stuff that you need to put on an endpoint, a laptop, a device, to protect it against an ever-growing list of threats. So we've got some examples on the left there of some of the types of threats that devices can fall foul to, that can be vulnerable to. And on the right-hand side in the blue, this is all the stuff that you should have on a device to protect it against these types of attack. Obviously, it's just not feasible to put all of those blue items onto a device because it's going to kill the performance of the device. The security or your IT teams will be forever updating and patching all of this stuff. And the cost as well, that's going to cost a fortune. And then when it comes to choosing, what is it I need to put on my device? How do you choose? How do you choose which solution is best for you? I mean, there's only a couple available, you know what I mean? But a lot of people might say, well, we just prefer to go for a best of breed approach, just buying solutions as and when we need them, just the best products we need as and when. That model works for us. But that model is broken. And if that's one that you're doing, please consider another way, because continually layering best of breed point solutions to address emerging security needs, it's caused in many cases organizational security not to strengthen but to break down. We see situations where tools aren't being integrated because it's too expensive or it's too complex, and that can create gaps in visibility, and that is what you don't want. We also see situations where there are more alerts to triage than your team can actually handle, and constantly retraining your IT admins and all of these new tools and all these new services, it's a constant challenge. So we believe that the paradigm needs to change, that it's important to find a balance between powerful security capabilities, but then a security posture that you can maintain over time with your current staff and your current budget. And that is, of course, where Defender for Business comes in, because there's no single security solution which is going to solve all of your problems. But Microsoft recommend fundamentally that you simplify your approach to complex security challenges by using native capabilities that are built into your platform, your devices, and your productivity tools, because this is going to help reduce the amount of time you spend managing lots of third-party product vendors. It's going to make the user experience easier. Your IT admins just having a single console, a single tool to use. It's going to make it much more simplified. It's going to lower the integration costs, because all of these features that we're talking about today are all designed to work with one another. And the main upshot, it's going to reduce your blind spots as well, areas in which you could potentially be vulnerable. And of course, Defender for Business is not just for Windows. It's for Windows, it's for Mac OS, it's for Android, iOS, and even Windows 365 and Azure Virtual Desktop. So again, not just looking after one area. So if you do have kind of a multi kind of tenant site utilizing a multitude of different operating systems, again, Linux, Mac OS, whatever it might be, mobile operating systems, virtualization, Defender for Business and M365 has got you covered. And I showed some of this stuff earlier, again, just showing where Microsoft currently sits when it comes to security, according to Gartner. I know this is absolutely tiny and you probably can't see it, but I promise you, Microsoft is in the leaders category of all of these different areas. And I should mention that Microsoft is the only vendor that is in the leaders category for all of these. Now that's interesting because some people might say that Microsoft security offerings are incredibly broad, like that's a bad thing, that they're a jack of all trades but a master of none. Well, what this Gartner Magic Quadrant shows us is that not only is Microsoft's security offering incredibly broad, not focusing on any particular area, but giving a very broad offering across a lot of different sectors in security, but it's also one of the industry's best. And IDC are saying very similar things. Microsoft as a security company for modern endpoint security for SMBs, Microsoft is the only leader according to the IDC, again beating out a huge amount of very well-known, very respected and trusted security companies to become the only industry leader in the IDC MarketScape. So absolutely one to consider. So the thing that makes Microsoft 365, well, Microsoft's security offering incredibly unique is the fact that Microsoft has got something called the Intelligent Security Graph. Effectively, this is a tool which monitors all of Microsoft traffic, whether it be commercial, consumer, whatever it might be. I mentioned this earlier as well. 43 trillion signals analyzed every single day across things such as Outlook, OneDrive, Azure, Xbox, Windows, Bing, Microsoft accounts. All this anonymized data is being analyzed by Microsoft. It's looking for threat vectors, any kinds of like malicious behavior, any new kind of types of virus or malware. Effectively, consider this as Microsoft's crystal ball to allow them to look and see what the future holds for cybersecurity. Now, because Microsoft has got all of this stuff, Outlook, OneDrive, Windows, Bing accounts, Azure, Xbox, that's what makes Microsoft's security proposition so unique, is that Microsoft has got a huge pool of data to be able to draw on, giving us these huge global optics. No other security company can claim the same, can have the same level of global optics in terms of security as Microsoft. And that's why Microsoft has risen so quickly to become an industry leader in security. And of course, Defender for Business isn't just one thing either. Defender for Business actually covers a lot of key areas, such as things such as threat and vulnerability management, constantly assessing your environment, your infrastructure, looking for any types of issues or threats. Attack surface reduction, looking for things that could potentially wind up being an issue. For example, it could be things that are code defects, or maybe it could be there are credentials that aren't being used. Maybe you had some people that worked in your company that don't work for you anymore, and you've got these licenses that are still live, they haven't been cancelled, and potentially that could be used as an inroad for someone with a cyber attack. Next generation protection, again, using things such as behavioral sensors and artificial intelligence to be able to detect suspicious behavior within your infrastructure. And just an interesting point on this, does anyone know how many days, this is an industry average, how many days pass from the point of an attack happening to the customer finding out that the attack happened? How many days do you reckon? like 7, 14, 31, more, less. Industry average. 360. Oh, Andrew's gone in strong with 365, 90. Freddie says a month. Okay. Well, I can tell you the industry average is 240. 240 days is the industry average. How bad is that? And we've seen this happen as well. We've seen this happen here in this country. TalkTalk. Quite a few years back, TalkTalk had to come out very publicly and admit that they had an attacker in their infrastructure for, I think it was nearly a year. This attacker had been in their infrastructure before they discovered him. Now, you could imagine that when TalkTalk came out publicly and said to all customers, we've had an attack for the last year, and in that time, that attacker has had access to your credit card details, your address information, personal information, all that sort of stuff. Could you imagine what the response from TalkTalk customers was? They bailed. They absolutely bailed. They TalkTalk actually became very close to the brink of collapse when that happened. They really did. On the flip side of the coin, they started offering some cracking broadband deals, so, you know, swings and roundabouts. But the point is, they lost a lot of customers. Now, who in this day and age can afford that? The great thing about next generation protection is it is all in real time. If we were to detect suspicious behavior within your organization, your IT administrators would be notified immediately. None of this 200 days lark. That is unacceptable. No organization nowadays can afford 200 plus days to find out that they were breached. So next generation protection, again, making sure that if anything is out of place, then it's going to notify IT administrators immediately. And again, tying onto that notification, again, giving things such as detection and tools for responding to attacks. But the thing that I'm most excited about and like the most is this: automatic investigation and remediation. This is very cool. Effectively utilizing artificial intelligence to effectively, if any type of threat is detected, effectively, as soon as it's detected, the AI will take over and it will respond to that attack. It will investigate and it will respond to that attack in exactly the same way that a human would do it, and a real IT analyst. Okay, so the auto investigation and remediation isn't just detect, quarantine. It will respond to each type of attack individually in the best practice method used by real IT analysts. And again, because this is a tool which is connected to the cloud, auto investigation and remediation always knows the best way to respond to hundreds, if not thousands, of types of attack. It's incredibly cool. So you can almost think of this as almost like RoboCop for cyber defense. If you've got limited availability with your IT team, if you haven't got dedicated security staff, auto investigation and remediation can really augment your existing IT teams by, again, giving that ability to remain secure, respond to attacks, but without any additional time being spent by IT administrators. And lastly, how can Microsoft 365 help me save on costs? Now, for this cost example, I am using the annual commit pricing. So the annual commit pricing is £16.60. If you were to do it on a monthly commit plan, it's £19.92. So just a heads up on that. And just looking at the difference between things such as business standard and business premium, for example. So business standard, we discussed this right at the beginning of the day. We can see the business standard. Again, you've got all your desktop apps, you've got your cloud applications. Whoops, let the cat out of the bag there. And it's £9.40 per user per month. Now, to go from business standard to business premium would cost you an additional £7.20 per user per month. And again, £7.20, that is still, you know, quite a bit of money. But consider the fact that included in that £7.20, you are getting all of these security tools that we've discussed today. All of this stuff right here, you are getting for that £7.20. Now, is it possible to go out and buy enterprise grade security solutions like these for less than this? Well, I'll put you out of your misery. No, it's not. You would be spending probably in excess of around 40 to 50 pounds if you were to just buy third-party equivalents of these tools and add that onto another plan. So when you consider that for only £7.20, you are getting what you had before plus some of the most advanced security currently available to SMB workers, I think the value is absolutely there. And of course, if you were to maybe even look at building out your own version of Microsoft 365, and of course, I've just got some examples here. If you consider Google Workspace, which again is still quite popular. We know that Google Workspace, for example, doesn't come with a huge amount of advanced security. They are doing better, but there are still some elements in which it lacks. So you might need to buy things such as Mimecast for your web and email protection, Okta for identity management, VMware for endpoint management, TeamViewer for remote desktop access, and CrowdStrike for endpoint detection and response. If you were to buy all of that stuff, you'd be looking around £53.36 per user per month, building out like an equivalent, an almost equivalent of M365 Business Premium. Whereas you can have all of this and more included in just £16.60 on an annual commit. So there is significant benefits that M365 can bring. And M365, again, it is more than just Office. It's designed to help you to enable secure remote work, to improve security within your organization, and of course, to do more with less.